everyone. Welcome to another week of Tuesday Teardowns. We just had some technical difficulties, so thank you for being super patient. For some reason, LinkedIn wanted to reconnect there, but Katie, thank you so much for being here. I'm the co-host, or one of the co-hosts, Maggie, and then we also have Jed Marley on here. But just to kind of give you a brief overview of what we do on Tuesday Teardowns is we tear down a piece of outbound content. So whether that be an email, a LinkedIn message, or a call script, we're going to review it all. We even review full campaigns there too. So we're super excited to actually review LinkedIn sequence today. So that's what we'll be diving into. But before that, found this super interesting stat that came from LinkedIn that said that 80% of B2B leads come from LinkedIn. So Jed, from your own prospecting, do you feel like that's pretty true to your own set of leads that come in?
I think specifically from if you're targeting B2B and people who are active, personas that are active on LinkedIn, it makes a lot of sense and you should aim for something like that. I wouldn't necessarily say 100% from LinkedIn, but is influenced as a result of LinkedIn, right? Like our
Mm,
whole strategy is let's share the knowledge that we have from working at Mailshake and talking with customers and share that consistently on LinkedIn and kind of build up the knowledge of what Mailshake does, the problems we solve, so that once those problems come up, people will know exactly who to reach out to. So I definitely would say it's pretty accurate for us.
totally. I love what you said too. It's like not even directly from like, did that person book a meeting straight from your LinkedIn DM or like a post that you did? That's,
Right.
that's not like the 80%, but actually having like it within the realm because there was actually a Mailshake customer that did an A/B test of just email campaigns, and then they paired email with LinkedIn, and their email reply rate went up by a lot just from adding LinkedIn. Like it's not like LinkedIn was the channel where they were getting a lot of responses. It was just that was influencing the emails that they were getting in their inbox too, and people were replying to them. So I think that 80% can be, yeah, like not directly a reply from LinkedIn, but have some influence in there too.
Yeah, it's much more indirect, and that's why it's harder to like stick with LinkedIn because maybe you don't see the exact results as you would with, you make 100 phone calls, you get 10 connects, you book one meeting. It's a little bit different, but it's still just as important.
Totally. Yeah, that's why it's super important to have it in there. And that's why we are going to be reviewing a LinkedIn cadence today. So, Jed, do you have that pulled up on your screen?
I do, yeah. Let me pull that up.
Sweet.
Share
Awesome. And this is
screen.
coming from a Mailshake customer. So, thank you so much for sending that over.
How's it look, Maggie? Do you see it?
Let's see. Awesome. Yep, I can see it clearly.
Okay, awesome. I can't see the chat right now, so if something comes up in the chat, just let me know because I'm sharing screen.
Mhm.
Um, but cool. Let's break it down. It's a three-step LinkedIn cadence, and what I will say too is again, if you're selling to a persona that's on LinkedIn, I think it's definitely worth your time to have a LinkedIn campaign separately, especially if you're targeting really high value accounts. Just having this run for like the week before you actually put them in your main sequence can be really helpful in sort of warming them up to your name and your company's name. A lot of people won't do it because it takes a little bit of extra time, but clearly this looks like is taking
Mhm.
that step. Let's break it down. It's three. The first email or the first message is a connection request with a message that says, "Hey, first, congrats on coming up with on 2 years with company. Love connecting with retail leaders who have a passion for IT and business and bring those together to put a focus on marketing and customer data. Only my university did my passion fuel for analytics. Hope we can connect, Aaron." So right off the bat, I definitely don't mind this message at all. I think one thing that's worth testing, we've talked about this before, is if you're sending a connection request, I actually prefer to just do it a blank connect and then have my messages come after that because, in my experience, it seems like the acceptance rate is much higher when it's a blank connect because people are so
Mhm.
used to just seeing messages with a connection request and associating them with like, oh, this is a spammy message. But I don't know, Maggie, maybe you have thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big person of I just connect with the person, wait till they get back in touch with me, and then I write up that message. The reasons for two reasons. Just like you said, the blank one is kind of like out of the mix instead of just getting a message. And then the second thing is sometimes I'm going to connect with people and I have to put in their email address. And sometimes I don't have it because I'm just doing prospecting off LinkedIn. So my thought is like, why am I going to go out of my way to write a personalized message for this person that I may not even be able to send a connection request if I don't have their email address? I don't know if anyone else gets that gate sometimes from LinkedIn where it's like, hey, insert this person's link email address before you can connect with them on LinkedIn. So I save it for that two reasons. Maybe it's lazy of me, but it actually works.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you're right too, because the other thing you have to think about is like if you're spending time writing messages when usually like at the most you're going to get a 50% connection accept rate. So
Mhm.
that means like 50% of the messages you're spending time writing aren't even going to be seen because they don't actually accept the connection request. So in that sense, it might be more worth your time to just send a blank connection request, see who accepts, and then personalize from there. But again, I don't think the message is bad. I think it could be a little bit shorter, especially for an intro message. I do kind of like that they called out something about them. It's congrats on coming up on 2 years. Um, I would just kind of shorten this. Like, love connecting with people. I mean, I think all you really need to do. I mean, the goal of a connection request is to get accepted, right? So you should shorten this with the idea of how do I give myself the highest percentage
Mhm.
chance of getting accepted. So maybe just congrats on coming up to 2 years. Love connecting with other retail leaders who have a passion for IT, like yourself, Aaron, and literally just that. It'll probably give you a higher chance at getting accepted and into the LinkedIn inbox.
Yeah. Yeah, because even the preview of that one, most people are getting these connections on their phone, I would assume. That's the first place that I kinda look with LinkedIn things, and then I'll open it on my computer. But that's gonna be cut off anyways, and even on the desktop, it's gonna be cut off too. So they may not even be reading that last part, and you can kinda just save it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then moving on to this next message here as well. One thing that's been working really well for myself and our SDR team is basically making this second message, that first message once they accept you, a voice note. And so what it'll sound like is
Mm,
we'll just send a blank connection request, and then we'll follow up in a few days. Whoever accepts our connection request, we'll just send a bunch of voice notes to them, and it pretty much just sounds like, "Hey Maggie, thanks for accepting my connection request. I just wanted to put a voice to the face and the name. Been talking to a lot of personas like yourself, and a lot of them are struggling with, in our case, email deliverability. Let me know if you want me to send over some resources on that. Again, thanks for connecting." And so you're just kind of like introducing yourself and kind of the problem you solve and saying, "Hey, I can send over some resources." And if you hit on that problem, which for us is email deliverability, we're getting a lot of responses. And then the key to that too
mm,
is you endorse all their skills on LinkedIn so that
love
you don't
it.
really get that many skill endorsements. So it catches their attention, and then they see this voice note and they're like, "What's this about?" And it's getting them to listen to our voice notes.
Totally. I love that, and I think you bring up, like, LinkedIn is still a social media, so I always like to tell people, like, get your head a little bit out of, like, LinkedIn is this B2B, like, social network and whatever, um, but think of it kind of like LinkedIn. I mean, like, you feel good when you get likes on a photo, or think about it like Instagram, sorry. You feel good when you get
Yep.
likes, or Facebook, or whatever else you use, or Twitter when you get something retweeted. That's like patting someone on the back or complimenting them on their work. So if you're in sales, I would totally recommend doing that, and that's where, I also just mentioned, like, yeah, like, people want to be recognized for those things. It's also soft touches instead of just showing up in the inbox. So you're doing, like,
Yep.
those things that are getting you noticed, getting your brand noticed, and then you're actually messaging in there. But Aaron has a good question. So he asks, "You endorse them at the same time you send the voice note?"
Exactly. Yep. So you endorse their skills and then you send the voice note. And I'm telling you, it's because then they're getting those notifications at the same time, and it helps them notice what your message is. Um,
Totally.
as far as this message goes, I have like my feelings and opinions on LinkedIn messages that are like kind of starting a conversation like that, like, "Hey, how'd you get into the industry? What are your thoughts on this?" Me personally, as somebody who is getting sold to, I know I prefer a salesperson to be more direct, right? So, like, if you want to book a meeting with me, just ask. Like, I'm actually think it's better to I don't want to say like directly pitch slap, but say like get a little bit more to the point, right? So my only thing is that in the past when I've tried to have these like kind of fake conversation, I'm not saying it's fake, but like conversations around that weren't really getting to the point, basically. kind of ghost me. It's harder to get responses. And so I'm a big believer if you don't really get what you don't ask for. So maybe instead making this a little bit more direct to say something like, I can send over a resource, if it makes sense, or if that resource is helpful, would it make sense to chat further? You know what I mean? Like, I think there's this big notion that pitch slapping is a bad thing. I have a strong belief that that's not true as long as you do it in the right way, like providing a resource and then asking if it makes sense, would you be open to meeting?
Yeah. I think I think it's something that has to do with your persona too. In the
Yeah.
last 3 years, I've only been selling to salespeople that kind of like know what's about to happen. I'm not saying it's going to be any different for other people, but I would just think about it in your shoes or with that persona of like ask them, how they like to be talked to as as someone getting sold to. So like as that buyer. But I do agree with you because yeah, I think we brought up this story before, but just like, I've messaged people even internally, like, hey, how's your day going? And they're like, hey, what do you need from me? Because
Yeah.
typically, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to move one business piece to the other. So if someone's reaching out to you out of the blue, it's probably for a reason that has to do with something like this. But I think it could definitely be worth A and B testing for your target audience too. But I agree with you, Jed. I'm more on the side of like, I think I know what's coming, but maybe it's just because we're salespeople.
Yeah, everything's worth testing. I mean, there's a difference between straight up pitch slapping and saying open to a demo, which is what we all want anyways, and saying like,
Mhm.
hey, thanks for connecting. Saw you did a HubSpot certificate. Me too. Um, have a couple resources I could send over that a lot of other personas like yourself find helpful. Want to check it out. And then once you send it, follow up in 3 days saying, hey, what are your thoughts on that resource? Do you want to meet? That's like the exact approach that we've taken with sales, marketing. I've even done it with IT
Mhm.
leaders in my last role. Like you can take these approaches and
Nice.
it's just sending the resource and following up. But again, I think it's solid and you could make that a voice note to get more responses.
Yeah. And before we go into this third one, we had a couple questions that came up that were good. So
Yeah.
Shashi, can it be done on the same day, voice note and LinkedIn message? Absolutely. Or actually, no. What do you think about that? Voice note and LinkedIn message should be separate days, unless you have a reason for the text also.
Yeah. To Maggie's point, unless you have a reason for the text, like I would say connect, then send the voice note once they accept, and then follow up with a message like a day later,
Yeah,
2 days later.
totally. Yeah, because it's just, I mean, I would consider it just like another message in their inbox. It's just a different way of sending the message as a voice note instead of text. So
Yeah.
there. And then another thing that came up here, Katie, this is a good question. How do you endorse a skill when you don't know them? Or like, why would you do it? That's a good question, Jeb. What do you think?
Yeah, so right now, like LinkedIn changed the way it works to where you don't have to like say why you're endorsing them or if you work together. You can literally just click endorsed
Mhm.
and then it pops up to the top of their notifications. Um, to be honest, people like it. It's like LinkedIn's the new resume, so it's helpful.
Yeah.
And the idea is really just to get their attention, and it kind of starts to trigger that law of I cannot say the word reciprocity or whatever the hell I can never say.
Repres Reciprocity. There we go.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I always get tongue twisted. But right, like you do that, it's a helpful thing, and they're more likely. I mean, really, the only goal of it is to make your message stand out because you did that, right? I mean, no one's really going to be mad at you,
Mhm.
like, hey, why'd you endorse my skill? That's really the thought process behind it.
Yeah. And if you don't wanna go that route of endorsing, someone, then you can just like their content or I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do on their profile to give them a notification, liking, commenting on their content. Maybe you follow their company page if they're in the marketing team because they'll get a notification from that on the company page. So you can do a couple things in there. Um, and then we have Aaron, Jed, can you share the script for the voice note one more time? Um, I don't know if you want to share that live or we can set up to you, Jed.
Yeah, for sure. It's really simple, and you can only do this on the phone too. So what I would do is like take a list of everybody you sent connections to, leave a reminder for yourself to follow up in 2 days, and then just knock out a bunch of voice notes. But it's really simple. It's just, hey, Aaron, thanks for accepting my connection request. I wanted to put a voice to the face and the name. I'm talking to a lot of personas like yourself, And a big thing that people seem to be struggling with is X. So whatever problem you solve, for us, it's email deliverability. I can send over some resources if that's relevant for you as well. Either way, thanks for connecting. And it should take 20 to 30 seconds to say.
Love it. Love it. Short and sweet, just like the messages in there. And then Sabina, is it possible to show the doc? You're showing, there'll be a recording to this, so you can take screenshots if you want, but it'll all be in there. Cool. Let's go on to the last message.
Awesome. So I won't read this whole thing here, but I did review this pre-call. I think this is where a lot of LinkedIn messages can go wrong. At this point, I think especially since COVID, every buyer has been inundated with LinkedIn messages. And one of the first things I look at when I get a LinkedIn message to decide whether or not to respond to that is the length of it. And if it has like 3 or 4 paragraphs, I'm immediately not really going to look at it. It's too much to read. There's so many LinkedIn messages. It's not something I want to, take my time to read. So that's one thing I would think about from your buyer's perspective is what does this message look like on a mobile phone in the LinkedIn DMs? Like you can copy and paste that into your own phone to see what that would look like. And usually this is going to look like a big block of text that they might not necessarily read. So I think there's a lot of value in here. But my only thing would be to shorten, like, for example, this first sentence. It says many retail leaders who work for companies in rapid growth, similar to company who I've exchanged LinkedIn messages with, share that they are putting an emphasis on customer acquisition and retention, and in specific turning to loyalty and putting customer data from the. So this could be shortened to, hey, name, talking to retail leaders like yourself. A lot of them are focused on this, and that's a much easier thing to read. And then you jump into your next point. So I would encourage you to just kind of read through this, see where your reader might get stuck, and just kind of shorten it to as many or to as little words as possible. But I don't know, Maggie, what were your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I agree with you totally because there's some great things in here, Aaron. Like, hey, I've been talking with a few, like the structure of it is good of like what you're putting in there, or like the content, I should say. So many retailers who work for companies in rapid growth, and then later on you say like, I heard that company might be looking to invest in loyalty and optimization of customer data. Um, but I think just shortening it because like those are good things like, hey, heard through the grapevine or things like that. And then you have that call to action. What is company doing to stay ahead of the competition advantage? And keeping it to just one of those. So I think it would shorten it a lot because at the end we have 3 questions. Just choose one of those. So like, what's the strategy? Or anything like that. But then to your point, Jed, of talking to a lot of similar companies about X. Yeah, I just rambled, but basically I like the content and it. I think just the structure needs to be changed.
Yeah, so like this could be your first sentence. I'm not sure what XYZ is. I don't know your company as well, but I think it's in here. And then sounds like company. I can't type. If you've been on these before, you know that. Might be looking at this too. And then pick one call to action. So to Maggie's point, you've got 3 questions here. What is the strategy in 2023? What is company doing to stay ahead of the competition? Interested in learning. So pick one of those. One of the biggest things when you have a call to action, make it its own sentence. It's the last thing in the message. Make it as clear as possible. What a lot of people do, and this is a good example, is like they have really good content. They have a really good email, a really good message, but then the call to action is just buried or not clear. So it's hard for people to respond to. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, I'm a big believer of you don't get what you don't specifically ask for. So make it as clear as possible what your ask is and make that the very last thing they see, and you'll get a lot more responses.
Yes, people skim everything. So you want your whole message to be skimmed and you want that last line to be as clear as possible to make it the most skimmable. So people can say, what's this person asking me for? Is that too big of an ask or am I okay with that ask? Then I can go back and read it. So totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah.
I love the rewrite.
No, it's good stuff. Again, I think this is like a lot of emails and messages, and even myself when I'm writing emails, Um, just the biggest rule is always flip your perspective, be your buyer, read through it as if you're getting that LinkedIn message on the mobile phone and ask yourself, where am I going to fall off? Where is this blending in with everybody else? Aaron, I don't know what your role is, but maybe one thing I would encourage you to do is reach out internally to other people at your company who are getting a lot of messages or getting a lot of emails and ask them to look into their inbox, look into their LinkedIn messages and say, hey, what was the last LinkedIn message you actually opened and responded to? And what are the ones that you aren't?
Mhm.
And then just do the opposite of that, right? And that's going to be the easiest way to figure out how to structure the solid message you have into and package it in a way that's going to get people to respond.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Sit in your buyer's shoes. And if you are lucky enough to have one of those buyers in your own company, enroll them in your own sequences. You'll get a lot of feedback and a lot of great data from them of what's working or what they would respond to as well. And that's actually what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks too with Tuesday Teardown. So we're asking our team internally of any messages that they got. So we've got someone on the product team, people on the sales team, our leaders, our C-suite leaders, and we're going to be reviewing content that they get from companies that you probably have heard of out there. So listen up in the coming weeks because that's what we'll be reviewing. And again, if you have any emails that you want, any LinkedIn messages, any cold calling scripts, you can always email me at maggie@mailshake.com. And the last thing, just kind of as a takeaway with LinkedIn in general, I would say keep it short and test out voice notes too. See if those work out for you. And Jed gave us an awesome script that he uses. And if you didn't catch it, you can always ping Jed and he'll give it to you. But any last words before we finish up, Jed?
No, no last words. Aaron, appreciate you letting us dig through that.
Mhm.
Try out the voice notes. And yeah, we got some cool emails that we're going to be reviewing in the coming weeks. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming on here and participating in Tuesday Teardowns. If you have any questions, you can always message any of us. Happy Thanksgiving for those of you who are celebrating, and we'll see you next week. Bye.